Hello, and welcome to today's Community Spotlight, where I interview local companies that I know and trust, and I introduce them to you. I'm your host, Andrew Tomasetti, and today I am here with Betty Long of Guardian Nurses.
Hello, Andrew.
Thanks for joining us today, Aunt Betty.
I am thrilled to be here and happy to participate. It's always good to talk to you.
I couldn't agree more. So, Aunt Betty, where do you hail from?
So I was born in Southwest Philadelphia, in the MBS parish, and then my family moved in 1968 to Olney, which is in kind of lower northeast Philly. So I am a Philly girl, born and bred.
Yes, the Alany, isn't there a bus station up there?
Yeah, Broad and Olney. Yeah,
Yes, that's where they start the Broad Street Run every year.
that's right.
Nice.
That's right. It isn't. When you think about Broad Street 10 miles down to the Navy Yard, it's pretty cool. And it's all mostly downhill.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
slight decline.
Yeah.
It really saves when you're running 10 miles, it saves those knees.
Yes. Yes. And the fact that it's a straight shot, right? There's not a lot of turns except for at City Hall. Do they run through City Hall or do they go around it?
I ran it maybe 5 years ago. It was raining, it was wet. I don't remember anything except how bad my feet hurt.
Oh, God.
And the squishies.
Yeah, but at least you did it. Good for you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Guardian Nurses.
So I have been a nurse for 36 years. And through various, as a nurse in the family, you always get asked, who should I see? Where do you recommend I go? So over the course of my career, I had those questions posed. And it was in 1999, my Uncle George and Aunt Betty lived in South Philly, and they were probably in their 80s. And Uncle George fell down the steps in his home and got a bleed in his brain. Was rushed to Jefferson Hospital, where Aunt Betty called me and I went down. And as the resident tried to explain to her that they wanted to put a breathing tube down her husband's throat, I was directly behind her. And I had been a critical care nurse for many years. So I was listening. And as soon as he said, we want to put a breathing tube down your husband's throat, I thought, uh-oh, this is not good, right? And she was just kind of nodding and looked back at me as if to say, what do I do? And I thought, there's got to be, what do families do that don't have a nurse in the family to lean on and ask those questions like, what do I do? What does this mean? So that was 1999, and it took me 4 years to put together the idea for Guardian Nurses Healthcare Advocates. And the intent was pretty clear: help people through the healthcare system at the time when they're actively going through a life-threatening diagnosis or a scary hospitalization. Get in there and help them and be with them when they're having that happen. So the unique part about what we do and what my nurses do is that we will go to the hospital and make sure that you're getting good care. We'll go with you to the doctor's appointment where they're going to review test results so that we can be there listening, taking notes when the doctor says something like, we found this, right? If it's something like cancer, patients glaze over. So all they hear is cancer. And so our job is to help patients have a better experience in the healthcare system by being with them, actually with them. There are a lot of programs that offer telephonic case management or telephonic care coordination. And, it's really important to me to be with somebody when you're able to, support them. So that was really the start with, Aunt Betty and Uncle George were the start. And it took me 4 years to get it off the ground and to open the doors. And now next year will be our 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's an auspicious 20 years. Someday you will have that same reaction, 20 years of your business.
What's one thing everybody should know before they go to the doctor?
I've thought about this, Andrew. I think that the most important thing, do not be afraid to ask questions. A lot of patients freeze. They are intimidated by the physician, the body language of the physician when they're starting to kind of exit the door, and patients just don't ask. And then the doctor, do you have any questions? No, I'm good. Out the door they go. And then they're like, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And so we talk with patients before they go in, and we'll say, Andrew, what's your goal for today's appointment? Well, I just want to know what's going on. My back has been hurting me for 6 months. Okay. Do you want to ask the questions, or are you okay with me asking the questions? So we have a little bit of a powwow before we go in, but we always say, if we're not able to go, do not be afraid. Ask the questions. They want to help you. They go into medicine to help people, but they're not great communicators, a lot of them.
So how do people know what questions they should be asking, what questions they shouldn't be asking?
You need to be responsible for your own healthcare, right? So if you're having, like for instance, when my nephew was discharged from the hospital today, I went through a list of questions for him and his girlfriend to go over with the physician or nurse who was discharging them. Things that they wouldn't think about. But when I pointed out to them what questions, like what kind of activity am I allowed to have? What kind of food should I eat? If my heart rate goes up, what should I do? Where do I get my meds? Who do I call if I'm having an issue? Because all those things come up after you've been discharged, and you forget. So I think you have to be responsible for some of your own healthcare and write the questions down, and no question is dumb. So just the things that you think of, write them down.
Right. And now, when someone reaches out to you, to Guardian Nurses, and says, hey, I have X, Y, and Z, this is what's going on, what sort of things should they be asking you before you bring them on board?
A lot of patients will call because they feel like they're not being listened to, or they don't know where to go. The things that we want to know are, do you have insurance, right? What's your insurance? Because if we need to get that study moved up, we need to get it pre-approved. So what kind of insurance do you have, right? Because that's going to determine what health system maybe you go into, because it would be less expensive for you depending on your insurance if you go into the network provider. So if you're with Aetna or Blue Cross or Cigna, we want to make sure we get you to the doctors that are going to be the most advantageous for you financially. And then what's your past medical history? Tell me about what's going on. In the instance of your pet, like what kind of things happened before, right? Did you have a bad experience in the healthcare system, right? Why? So we want to make sure that our engagement with you is going to be the best that it can be. I don't want to just take patients on because they call. I want to make sure that we can help them, because then we're just repeating. If they have a bad experience, we're repeating the bad experience.
Do you have a favorite success story?
Oh God, Andrew, there are so many favorite success stories. The first one that I remember was a police officer who was 61. He had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and the police reached out to me when I was working with patients, and he said, "Look, I want to retire. I don't want to have brain surgery." And so they said, all right, we'll have Guardian Nurses, reach out to you. So I did talk to him. I said, can I get a HIPAA signed, right? An authorization for me to get your test results. And when I looked at his imaging, he had the type of brain tumor that I know is to be slow growing. So I said, we should get you a second opinion. And he's like, oh, I don't know. They told me to have surgery. They could do it next week. And I'm like, no, time out. No surgery. Get a second opinion. So we went to a second opinion with a neurosurgeon who looked at his imaging and said, I'm not sure we need to do surgery. I think we should wait 6 months and get another CAT scan. And he was like, all right, great. I didn't want to have surgery to begin with. I'll wait 6 months. 6 months go by and we got another scan, and we went in, and I was with him, and the doctor threw the images up on the light board. This is how old it was. It was light board, not the computer. And he said, it's gone. And the patient was like, what did he just say? And I said, doctor, did you just say it's gone? He said, yep. And the patient was like, oh my God, This is great. What happened? And he said, I think it was inflammation that was causing your symptoms. He had some facial drooping, which, is oftentimes a sign of a brain tumor. 6 months later, he was fine. I get goosebumps now even talking about it because had he had the surgery, it would have been needless, right?
Right.
But getting a second opinion by a physician who, different systems, who had more experience, perhaps,
Right.
um, made a big difference. We
Wow.
have, Andrew, we have so many great patient stories. It's an honor to be leading a group of nurses that do this work because I get to hear the great stories.
Now, Aunt Betty, do you have a binder or somewhere that it has all of these success stories? Because
Yes,
that's pretty incredible to go from, hey, we need to do surgery to, oh, wait, you're fine.
it's gone.
Right.
Yeah, I do, and now uh, our nurses will send stories to the team to share, and I keep them electronically because at some point I'd like to commemorate them somehow, write a book, or just encourage patients that it can happen. And that's what makes me get up in the morning every day, to hear these stories and to see the nurses who have come, you know in many ways their careers are 10 years long, 20, 30 years long, and they find the joy again to help patients. And that's so cool to me to see them kind of perk up and say things like, this is why I went into nursing.
Right.
Right. So I get to celebrate their passion again and their joy, and I get to celebrate the patient's success as well.
Right. And I would imagine that your nurses feel much more fulfilled being a personal patient advocate instead of
Yes.
just having to do one patient and it being more like a revolving door.
Yes, they say that all the time, that they feel like they're making a difference.
That's all.
Finally. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you can have a win for your customer and have a win for your nurses.
Yes. Yes. It's
That's
it's really
incredible.
it's kind of a yeah, it's a joy really to do this work.
So what are some bad recommendations you hear?
Um, One that I hear a lot is, don't worry about it. Like, you know, it's like they discount that physicians or even providers, nurse practitioners, they discount how a patient feels. Don't, like there's nothing to worry about. And it's like, well, but if they're worried, right? Like I want them to meet the patient where they're at. So I hate to hear, don't worry about it, or, it's fine. It's not fine. If you don't feel it's fine, it's not fine, right? So there's got to be a negotiation between the provider and the patient. I just heard a story the other day where a woman, her mom had ovarian cancer, and she wanted to, she was in her mid 50s, she was feeling a little bit weird, and everybody kept discounting her. You're fine, you're fine. And she's like, if you could just test me. I Turns out she had a small ovarian tumor that they took out. And so the ovarian cancer had not spread by the time but it was her persistence. I'm not happy. So I think that's the bad advice, is to discount, if somebody says, don't worry about it, or, whatever, have a game plan. Sometimes when breast lumps are diagnosed, doctor will be like, oh, it's nothing. If you feel like you need to have another opinion, get another opinion.
And I have one more question for you. What's your favorite coffee?
Pete's.
Pete's.
Pete's coffee.
It comes in, is it red?
No, it's brown.
Okay.
And even further down is the Sulawesi uh, bean.
Okay.
So, yeah,
And if people want to know more about you or Guardian Nurses, where can they find you?
I would welcome them to look at our website, guardiannurses.com. We're also on social media as well, Facebook and Instagram, and also LinkedIn, if anybody's on LinkedIn. So thank you, Andrew, for the time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming, Aunt Betty. This has been another community spotlight where I interview other local businesses that I know and trust and introduce them to you. Have a great day.